All right, thanks for joining us today as IntelliMagic shares Vision 8.8 virtual tape. What's new? We have packed a ton of helpful insights in this webinar. You will be receiving a follow-up email with the recording of this webinar after we have concluded. We encourage you to ask any questions using the chat feature. We will have a Q&A time at the end of the presentation. Our IntelliMagic presenters today are Brent Phillips, who is the manager of the Americas region, and Bert Loper, senior consultant for virtual tape. Prior to joining IntelliMagic in 2010, Brent spent his career in technical leadership and focused on infrastructure and application performance and stability. He now leads us in the Americas. Bert Loper joined IntelliMagic after 35 years of tape experience with IBM. Let's go ahead and get started. Brent, I will pass it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Anthony. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for spending some time with us today. There we go. There's the agenda of what we want to cover today. We have some customers on, but a lot of folks that are not customers as well that are not too familiar with kind of the philosophy behind IntelliMagic Vision and how that's different on the reporting that you're currently using for your ZOS infrastructure today. So we'll cover some initial concepts, and then Bert is the expert, a really deep expert on tape and virtual tape environments, and he's going to do an overview of IntelliMagic Vision for ZOS virtual tape, and then kind of talk about some of the latest features. There's a lot of content related to Oracle VSM. A lot of the concepts that he'll cover are also applicable to the IBM TS7700 environment, but the kind of the focus of this is really kind of the new features, and there's a lot of features related to Oracle VSM. So it's not a complete overview of all the capabilities in the product. If you want that for your particular environment, then we can certainly set up something that's structured more towards what you really care about. Then we'll do a summary and talk about how we can actually do a demo using your data as well. So first we'd like to talk about just the process of modernizing how you interpret the RMF and SMF data, because a lot of people think that the process is as good as it gets since we've been doing it so long. Here at IntelliMagic, we believe that the greatest potential in the data is still unutilized. Somebody has some background noise there. Maybe you can mute if you're not speaking. So that's our intent with IntelliMagic Vision, is to find a way to mine that value out of the data and show you what it means. So it's not just for forensics and trending, but it actually can add value in avoiding real-time issues of performance situations. Now, tape and virtual tape sometimes has less real-time issues. It's maybe more about how the replication is handling, what you're asking it to do, so on and so forth. Bert will get into some details on really the kind of the magic that can be created by getting more out of the data than you're getting today. For example, by combining knowledge about the physical characteristics of the hardware that you're using with the logical tape workloads to get some new visibility into that. And that's really what a lot of sites that we work with are asking for and needing today, to get a very easy to understand view into how well is the hardware handling the work that you're asking it to do. So that's kind of our objectives in shifting the situation from where it is in this case to those kinds of objectives. And Bert and I and Anthony, we're a part of a team of about 70 people now, and that focuses really on this issue of creating new intelligence out of the performance and configuration data, so that it serves as kind of a beacon of what's important to look at, where are the dangers that are hidden under the surface, and how do you navigate with this better intelligence about where you're at, where you need to go, and how to avoid these issues. Because as we, with IntelliMagic Vision, we work with a lot of different customers in the performance and capacity and storage teams and large sites, and really try to help them have the ability to run without service disruptions, so avoiding problems without wasting money. So both sides of the same coin can be addressed with this kind of process to actually see issues before they disrupt service and to be able to resolve the issues more quickly and solve the underlying problems without having to spend a lot of time on manipulating the data and understanding what it means for these workloads on this particular piece of ZOS infrastructure. The flip side of the coin is about delivering that performance in an efficient manner, efficient from a hardware perspective and efficient from a people perspective as well. We find that sites just don't have the time to create a lot of custom reports and then apply the human intelligence and expertise about what it means. The more you can build into a product, the more effective you'll be able to manage the environment so that it operates as you designed it to operate when you purchased it and configured and implemented it. That's the objective. The way that this magic occurs and why it's really different is really because of the embedded expert knowledge that we've included in the process. So it's a modernization of how we process and how we understand or interpret what the data means for my workloads on my infrastructure. That's what we're getting after. So this embedded expert knowledge helps us to do things like derive new metrics out of the raw data that are not available just in the native data. Throughput, understanding throughput, for example, and how the different internal components are handling it. Applying expert knowledge about what's the best practice for the configuration and performance of this particular infrastructure. Being able to quickly see balance and redundancy identification across the different components. And as I mentioned earlier, just the relationship of the logical work with the physical resources is very important for really understanding the environment. So just a couple of charts graphically of what that looks like. I mean, typically if you have some kind of alert about a problem occurring, it's typically something that's affecting production, and it's a pretty urgent situation because most of the alertings are triggered by metrics that are easy to get, but are really more symptoms rather than root causes. So our approach is to really understand the characteristics of the hardware that's running the work and monitor these root causes as opposed to symptoms so that you can find out about an issue that's developing before it really affects a production environment and becomes a more critical fire, and then you can okay, I am unmuted, I think. If you automatically apply the expert knowledge to every device in every data center across every interval, there's a lot of value that can be had from this automatic checking. It's kind of like 1,000 pairs of eyes that can automatically interpret what the data means for your workloads and your infrastructure. And it really gets to this idea of that ITIL talks about on capacity management. And it's the only way to get to it because nobody's got the time to do this kind of assessment on this frequent of a basis. So it will affect the performance and availability and efficiency of how you run the environment. So just for some background, I know this is a focus on the virtual tape module. That's one module that we have for IntelliMagic Vision for ZOS. There is a systems module as well that focuses on these areas here. We're working with a lot of customers on this to help identify opportunities to reduce MLC. So there's some significant benefits of that particular module. We have a webinar on Wednesday on that topic. There's a disk and replication module. This is where we started many years ago, actually, with IntelliMagic to focus on detailed I/O performance analytics and detailed analytics about the replication environment and Icon environment, so on and so forth. Today, this module that we're talking about is focused on ZOS virtual tape. We support the IBM and Oracle, as I mentioned. EMC DLM is in development. We're working close with EMC, getting a lot of requests for that product, so we're expecting that to be released in the first version in early 2017. Finally, the last slide that I have before we switch over to Bert is the how you can consume this. Most of our customers these days are using IntelliMagic Vision as a service where you automatically transfer the data that we need to our servers. We will process it and create the health assessments automatically, and you have full access to a web reporter and a Windows reporter to do all the interactive views of it. It also allows us, or allows our customers to contract with some of our experts like Bert for different advice, because we're looking at these kind of infrastructure components from a lot of different customers, and can provide some advice on what we're seeing and how to configure or address different issues that may be cropping up. So with that, I want to give you just actually one view into kind of how the interface looks and how that's different than the static reports. This happens to be a disk subsystem dashboard, but it's the idea really of understanding key risk indicators and quantifying the risk in the infrastructure to handle the work that you're asking it to do. And so we summarize these in what we call dashboards, and a lot of products have dashboards, but there's not other products that I'm aware of that actually rates the metrics as to good or bad based on the type of workload it is and the characteristics of the hardware that it's running on. And that's kind of what our intent is. So you can look at even a large complex environment in only a few minutes per day and understand, is there some issues that are important for somebody to take a look at and drill down before they get worse, before things back up, so on and so forth. And this is how we visualize it. There is an exception chart that's actually a higher level that will show you all the different dashboards that have issues that have been rated with our built-in embedded expert knowledge of what's good and what's bad, because it's all about what the data means for your infrastructure. So with that, I want to leave the rest of the hour for Bert. I'm going to switch the presentation over to you, Bert, and we can get into some of the more technical details. If you can share your screen.
All right. Thank you, Brent. A good introduction for us to IntelliMagic Vision. And now we're going to concentrate on IntelliMagic Vision for ZOS Virtual Tape. And I know many of you on this call do not have that installed, so we're going to spend just a bit of time on just a brief overview of how IntelliMagic Vision for ZOS Tape works, and then cover mostly the new enhancements that are in version 8.8 of the IntelliMagic Vision product. So just as a introduction in what the architecture is, here's how the process actually works. We gather data from a number of sources. So on the left-hand side there, if you have a TS7700, we use the BVIR function to gather all the BVIR statistics from that 7700 data. We also gather from your Z-series LPARs all of the SMF data that are relating to tape. And if you have Oracle VSMs, they also write a special record and special set of records in the VSM that we also capture. And then optionally down there, the tape management catalog, the TMC, can give us if you capture it on a daily basis, it gives us a point-in-time indication of some of the information in there. But it is optional if you're not really interested in those types of things. That data is as in processed. It goes through an analyze, what we call an analyze process, to transform that data into statistics as much as necessary that we can then analyze and look at. Load it into a database, and that database can either be a MS or a SQL server on a Windows platform, or can be a DB2 platform on your ZOS system if you so desire. Once that's done, then we have a couple of Vision clients. One is a Windows client that you install on your laptop or desktop, if you still got those, and you can look at it through there. But the other client that we've offered recently is for people who can't really install software on their own laptop, or just are more casual users, and there's called a web reporter capability where you just get onto the website to do that, and then be able to look at any number of charts and statistics and dashboards that help you in that. One second. I'm sorry. All right, so just a quick summary here. Here are the actual details of what we collect from SMF, the various records there. We support, from a tape catalog standpoint, we support the 5 major tape management catalogs that almost all ZOS customers have. Again, we get BVIR data as well as Oracle data. Specifically for the Oracle VSM, it writes a number of event records with various subtypes, and these are the list of those if you're interested in them. And we'll see in this presentation later where we can actually show the details for a particular VTV and see all of the different events that might have occurred in the life of that particular VTV. Oh, excuse me. All right. So what's new? Okay, that's what we're going to talk a little bit now from the IntelliMagic Vision standpoint. And first of all, this first set of things is things that are actually new in version 8.8, whether it's ZOS tape or any of the others. So we're going to talk about some of the new functionality that's available in all of our platforms. And one of those is a personalized dashboard for the web report. We'll look at that. We'll look at how you can have multiple charts, filter on multiple charts at once if you want to isolate down to a particular, for instance, 7700 cluster. We'll look at some enhancements been made in the comparing charts, how you can get a different perspective by using multiple variables on a chart. And then finally, I won't cover any more detail, but we do have now the ability to export to a Microsoft PowerPoint even if you don't have PowerPoint installed. So, what's new with actually the ZOS tape? We have some new tape catalog perspectives, and we're going to take a look at these in detail in a second here. We have from a Oracle VSM perspectives, we have new reports that use the VSM event records. And let me just take a second here to say, as Brent mentioned, a number of these enhancements in version 8.8 are related to the Oracle VSM. And part of that is just that the support for the 7700 actually came out in early 2014. And so we've had most of these enhancements or things similar to these enhancements available in the TS7700 environment for some time now. And the support for the Oracle VSM came out last year, and we're now basically on a lot of customer requirements. We're actually improving on that particular environment now. Finally, we have a couple of perspectives. Again, these workload balancing and trend analysis are already in there for the 7700s, but we now have some workload balancing perspectives and some trend analysis capabilities now in the VSM environment also. So let's talk about the personalized dashboard, okay, for a second. In this particular case where you're using a web reporter, in other words, not installed on your particular laptop, but just using the internet capability to get today, we have the ability to customize your particular dashboard to any way that you want to with some items called widgets, okay? You can move those widgets around, you can add them, delete them, you can basically customize that first look, your dashboard, to whatever look that you want to do there. And as you can see on the right-hand side there, I even have on every screen, every display that I have the ability to say, add that to my favorites, put it onto my dashboard, or add it to my dashboard and be able to see those anytime I want to see. So next, let's look here as a sample personal dashboard. Again, if we look at the number of widgets on here, quite a bit of a thing. There is one section here where it shows you all the favorite charts that this person has decided they want to see as soon as they get to the dashboard. And also, on the top right there, you see every screen now has a My Dashboard item that allows me to return to that dashboard directly without any other flowing through any other sources, if you will, there. Each of the widgets that you see there has the ability to minimize them, expand them, or customize them by clicking on the gear chart and choosing what you want to do. This particular one has a number of exception reports. That's why you see the red and the yellow, red being an exception item and yellow being a warning that you may want to take a look at. All right. Secondly, we're talk about filtering multiple charts at once. Prior to this release, we've had the ability to filter on a chart. So on a particular chart, we could run a filter like this that says, I only want to see a particular subset of the items that are on this chart and apply that filter to that chart. But if you moved on to another chart in there, you had to repeat doing the filter. What we now have is the ability up on the ribbon of the Windows Reporter is a set filter capability so that I can say set this filter, and that will apply for all of the charts that are on there. So in this particular example, you can see on the left we have quite a few controllers showing up there. Too many maybe to look at, but I want to only look at those that begin with IBM or contain IBM. And so I set this filter, I apply that filter, and now that chart changes automatically to only show only the three, in this case, three IBM controllers that were part of that. And again, that filter will apply across all of the reports in this particular, what's called report set. If I finish with that and want to clear it, then I have a clear filter button also, obviously, that takes me out of that. Next one I want to talk about is the compare charts function. Okay, we have the ability to give a different perspective on the data by comparing it to previous time frames within either the next N days, the next N weeks, or N years. I often use this when I'm looking at a day and I want to say, well, how did this day look like 1 week ago? Because in many cases, I don't want to look at necessarily a day because things change as day to day, but week-wise, so like every Wednesday typically is fairly similar. I might say I want to look at this week from last Wednesday to see how it happens. And when we do that compare chart, we're going to see an example. We will see an overall average on there, and we'll also see the calculated relative changes as well as absolute changes between the two periods. Bottom right there, so again, up on the top ribbon, you click on compare, you choose whether it's in days, in weeks, or in years, and you click on it, and you get something like this where it's showing a comparison between two different days, in this case 5/14 and 5/16. It's showing the average line that you can see there across there, and obviously showing that this latest day was actually lower than the previous day that we're comparing against. And the top up there shows that the change was about a 14% less this day than it was in the previous day, and absolutely in about 40 megabytes a second or so. So again, good perspectives when you want to see what has changed from day to day or week to week that might be having an impact on your particular performance. Okay. Another capability, actually was introduced before 8.8, but just recently, was the ability to put multiple variables on a chart and give very different perspectives. So once you're down to a single line on a chart, in this particular case, I think we've gotten down to the point where we're looking at the channel total throughput for a particular TS7700 cluster. I can now go through a customized chart dialog and add additional variables that I want to display on that particular chart. In this particular case, I'm showing I added channel write throughput using the same y-axis, but there's also a capability to have a secondary y-axis if they are measured in different ways. So the example we're going to see next actually looks at added channel write and channel read to the total function, and gives us a different perspective now than just the channel total throughput. I was interested in, okay, what makes up that? Is it mostly write? Is it mostly read? And you can see here for mostly the red, which is the total, okay? Most of that total is made up of write workload, and only occasionally do I see some bumps in the read workload. So again, I got a different perspective of the data by looking at multiple variables together. Okay, now we're going to move into one thing that's been added with version 8.8, and that's some additional perspectives based upon the tape catalog itself. And we're going to look at various TMC reporting by volume group. In our definition, a volume group is a tape workload. And we have some default volume groups like HSM ML2, HSM backup, DB2 backup, DFDSS backups by default, but you can add additional volume groups based upon your requirements and your particular workloads that you're interested in within the product itself. Once you're looking at things, we'll see, you can drill down to see, okay, what particular job names and our program names were actually causing these volumes to be created. And finally, we'll look at something called scratch volumes from a tape catalog perspective. So here's an example, and generally when we're looking at tape management catalogs, we're going to be looking at multiple days. In this particular case, we got nearly a month of, I think, a month worth of data here. And we're looking at how the number of volumes has grown over this particular period. We can see there's been some increase there, and that's why customers ask us for this. They say, I want to know where my, in this case, virtual volumes are coming. Why are they increasingly? What are my application groups doing to me that cause my number of virtual volumes to increase? In this case, it looks like HSM backup has been increasing, so some additional backups are occurring, something such as that. And it allows you to see the trend. And again, with our drill down capability, which is up there, you can drill down and to see particularly jobs or programs that might have been contributing to that increase in volumes that you might have seen here. Secondly, we had customers saying, I need to know how my scratch volumes are doing. Okay, and so this is based upon the tape management catalog, and it looks at it by media type. And so we have the 3490 media types, and we have the 3592 media types showing here. And it gives you an idea of how those scratch volumes. So obviously, again, you're going to look at the trend here over a period of time. If obviously that number of scratch volumes is decreasing over time and you're getting fairly low, then you're going to have to take some action, either as buying new cartridges if it was real tape, or inserting additional virtual volumes if it's a virtual tape. Okay, here's another, from a TS7700 perspective. I told you most of these enhancements are for VSM, but an enhancement that occurred a few months back was a TS7700 was the ability to display the cache flows. And this is an example of that. So cache flows are what's coming in and out of the cache of a 7700, and it's breaking it down by the various types of flows. And these are all compressed numbers. So in the box there, you see the dark blue and the red. That's actually the host throughput from a compressed standpoint, both from read and a write standpoint. Light blue is a inbound remote write, which actually in this case is a sync copy. So we can see during a particular period of time, peak period here, we're doing a lot of host I/O, okay, if you will, in the red box there, and then but generally we're not doing much deferred copying during those times. That's the purple that you see there. Once that host throughput goes down, we're seeing now that the outbound deferred copy is occurring from this particular cluster until he's transferred it to however many clusters he needs to transfer it to. And the yellow actually is inbound, so if in this particular case there's some data that comes in at times to this particular cluster also. Well, this is a very good perspective for understanding what's happening in the background, or what's happening totally from the 7700, both the front end side, which we looked at, and the back end side from a replication standpoint. All right. Now we're going to move on to some VSM enhancements that were made in 8.8. And one of the questions that a customer said, well, I needed to know if my data is exposed. So we started processing some event records. And let me define what VTV exposure is. Okay. So once I've had a dismount of a virtual volume, That's only in one particular buffer at that point. So I really haven't secured that, okay? And until it's in a second location, we consider that to be exposed. Now, it can be unexposed by one of two things. It can be unexposed by it's migrated to tape, okay? Or it's being replicated to another VSM, okay? So we're monitoring those records and calculating various metrics about the exposure time for each particular volume. And what we display, or we have the capability of displaying by management class, because your migration could be based upon management class. We display average exposure time, what was the maximum exposure time, the number of VTVs that were exposed, and the amount of gigabytes that were exposed. So let's take an example of the average exposure time. And this shows hour on the left, but we're changing this to minute because that's obviously a better metric here for this particular metric. And we're seeing that for the MDEF management class, we're seeing what amounts to about 12 to 15 minutes. And occasionally for the other class, the blue one that we're seeing here, we're jumping up to the higher levels. We can go and see why that is occurring again, through the drill downs that we're going to look at. Another picture that we get is how many of those VTVs are exposed at any particular given interval. So again, the peak here looks like about 16 VTVs were exposed at some point during that particular time. And then also a perspective from a gigabyte standpoint, how much data is it that's been exposed? Still is the only copy in the buffer that we have. And then if you drill down, this is an example of a drill down that says, okay, I want to find out how much is exposed and what was the exposure time, okay, that I'm looking at, okay? And so this shows it by exposure time that was there. It happens to be for a different sample here. Okay, this was when there was a lot of virtual tapes that were exposed. And what from this chart, I can drill down on any particular VTV and look at what were the details of that exposure. And so this is an example here. So we've got a VTV. Started mounting it. The identify record says that we mounted this at 5:02 a.m. The dismount record says it was rewind, unloaded at 5:05 a.m. The identify record that HSC or VSM has written says I migrated it to tape at first tape at 5:15, and actually I migrated it to a second cartridge, in this case at 5:40. Calculating an exposure time of 10 minutes. So again, you can, if need be, drill down and understand why it was exposed and whether that meets the criteria that you're expecting in your particular virtual tape system. And next, we're going to look at some buffer efficiency. There's a lot of different parameters that tell how well is my VSM buffer, okay? We want to know if they're staying in the buffer according to the policy. There's some management classes you want to stay in there for a good long time. There may be others that you don't really care if they're in there very long. How much space am I using in that buffer for each of the management classes, and how many VTVs are there in there? Okay, but more importantly, sometimes is, are we getting the hit percentages that we expect? Because we leave stuff in the buffer because we want it to be able to be a hit when somebody starts to read it. And then finally, a special thing is, are we getting situations where we're deleting it from the buffer and then relatively soon afterwards we're getting it recalled back into the buffer, i.e. a thrashing, if you will. So here's an example of the average time in the buffer. Again, there are the management classes are listed across the bottom here. A little green dot indicates the average, and then you also get a minimum and a maximum over the period that's being examined here. And you would look at these to determine if the particular management class are meeting the criteria that you expected for that particular management class. Here's a sample with lots of management classes, okay? indicating the compressed size. In other words, how much space is being used in the buffer for each of the various management classes that have defined. And you can again drill down on these if you want to look at particular VTVs that might be contributing to that. Okay. Finally, here's a buffer read hit percentage, again by management class. You hope that it's always 100%, right? You hope it's always in there, but generally that cannot be true unless you've got a very large or VLE or a large capacity buffer in your VSM. And so this gives you an idea of what kind of hit percentages I'm getting. Now in this particular case, I've sort of highlighted that the HSM backup is a couple of things that are not getting real good read hit percentages. That may well be true. It may be that really what's happening here is I'm recycling my HSM, and I'm recycling it in such a time that I really don't expect it to still be in the buffer at 10 days later or 14 days later or something such as that. So again, it would be is this something you were expecting, or is it something that seems to be out of range? I mentioned earlier about we call it delete efficiency, okay? And the question we're answering is, are the VTVs being recalled that were recently deleted from the buffer? So here's a list of VTVs that were fairly low time from delete to recall, and showing the numbers over there in the right-hand side. Now, if I want to look and see, okay, what was a particular one? In this case, it's going to look, I think, at 20195, which is actually about 15 hours, I believe. Okay, we actually can, with a drill down, say, okay, show me the events that occurred. It shows me the time. It shows me the time that it was last referenced at on February 19th. And it shows that I deleted it from the buffer on February 25th at 12:03 p.m. But now on the bottom there, I recalled it back at 3:55 a.m. So still a fair amount of time, but that's an example of a situation where it's deleting it and think, do I want to change my management class and try and leave it in there longer? That's a possible change that I might want to make. Okay. Now we're going to look at tape workload distributions, and again, these are available in the 7700 environment only. But with 8.8, we have started giving the ability to show these for the VSM environment also. So I want to look at how is my workload distributed across my different VSMs, and are the different VSMs have a different behavior to them. Well, here's an example of we have 6 VSMs. And obviously, very quickly I can see that, oh, wow, well, they're not really distributed real well, okay? But the answer to that is that the first 3 and the last one are the production VSMs, and the middle 2 are actually the development type VSMs. So we can see that the production VSMs are relatively well balanced across each other, but we see less work, less mounts, although higher variability in the 2 development type guys. So again, that's if all of your VSMs were production, you expect all of them to be about the same. This will give you a perception of whether that is being balanced well. If I want to look at the 6 VSMs by what type of mounts they're doing, this gives you the distribution by mount type. So again, we see that the 2 development ones have more specific mounts, if you will, the 4 and 6, and we see there's some imbalance in terms of mounts between with 3 being higher, and most of the 3 looks like it's some specific mount. So we may have something specific, some particular workload that only goes into VTape 3, and when it gets when you have to access it, it obviously has to come from that particular VTape there. Again, a distribution that gives you a different perspective. Okay, next is multi-day views. We call this trending, okay? And so in trend analysis, we're going to keep track of the data over multiple days. Typically, we have 365 up to 365 days is our default to keep track of the data, although that can be extended to as much as a couple of years. And it gives us the ability to look at those trends in various parameters for capacity planning purposes, for one, be able to justify new hardware requests, and to see how your workloads are changing over time. So here's an example of the total throughput. Again, 6 different VSMs. And we're kind of looking for trends. Now this is the 7 weeks of data. Obviously not a big period in terms of 365. And I see it's hard to see a trend in overall here. The only thing I do see is that obviously every 7 days the workload is much higher. And that's not untypical in many customers where possibly a Saturday or Sunday there's a lot more backups, a lot more other things taken, and therefore higher throughput. So we can see not only the trend over the peaks over time, but we also see kind of the day-to-day variations when we look at this on a daily basis in different perspective. And then another trend that we can look at is how is my RTD mount time? Am I getting to the point where I'm seeing an increase over time with how long it's taken to mount my real tape drives, okay, and see if there's a trend there that I want to be able to address. Could be more tape drives, could be a number of different types of things that might address it if this was starting to increase there. Again, we see here, in general, about a 45 to 54 second mount time for whenever there's RTDs being mounted, and although some variation with time, pretty much nothing way out of range there. Okay, so again, that's the perspective we can get, some of the perspectives we can get from trending information. And so I'm going to finish it up here and give us time for some questions here. Again, the operational benefits. We talked about the web reporter and personalizing a dashboard for you, okay? So you can put the charts that you want to see, okay, on there and see them very quickly without having to navigate to the particular ones that you want to look at. We can have the global filter that we have now, okay? So at once I can concentrate on a particular, particular VSM or a particular cluster within a grid of 7700 and look at the data from many, many angles. And hopefully do a better analysis there. We've seen how the tape management catalog reports can now see whether we're growing vol serials in particular tape application areas and possibly take some action there. We've looked at the VTV exposure reports, telling you how long it's exposed, and then we've looked at the new VSM reports of how cache is being used and whether it's meeting your expectations. So again, that's a quick overview of IntelliMagic Vision for ZOS virtual tape, and primarily concentrating on the version 8.8 enhancements. Obviously, there are tremendously more things that we can show you on this. So if you have some interest in pursuing further, and we know what your environment is, for example, if you're a TS7700 customer, we could set up a demo that would just look at the 7700 types of things, or your VSM customer likewise. So we can handle all of those, and we just let us know, okay? So Brett, I'm going to change it back to you now.
I've got the screen back. Thank you very much, Bert. It's a pleasure working with experts such as yourself. You know your material very well. So thank you, everyone. We have some questions that we'll cover, and hopefully we'll get you out of here a little before the hour, give you some time back. So one of the questions here was about TS7700 environment, and he was asking if any DFRMM inventory data can be captured in order to complement the SMF and the BVIR data.
We are, like I said, we are optionally capturing the tape management catalog, and RMM is obviously one of those, okay? And so we can capture information like that you saw in a similar chart here, whether it's a 7700 environment or a VSM environment, we can capture that information and show volumes by workload. We know we still have some additional workload or additional development effort we want to throw into that particular one, but we do have some perspectives from the tape management catalog now, no matter what type of tape management catalog it is.
Yeah, very good. Okay.
And Brent, we are seeing those questions on your screen. I don't know if you intended for that.
Oh, okay.
Go through them.
Oh, well, I thought that wasn't visible, but that's all right. As long as Caesar doesn't mind. Anything for PTP to VTV? Where to go?
Peer-to-peer within the VSM environment?
Yeah, anything for P2P BTS operation is the question.
Yeah, okay. Okay, peer-to-peer was an old term for in the 7700, but I think he's really talking about VSM to VSM replication. And yes, we do, if you're doing replication between your VSMs, we do have some replication numbers that show how much of that process is occurring. Obviously, whether it's been how long it took to replicate it to the other controller, when that replication starts. So the VTV Exposure, as an example, I mentioned about either migrate or replicate. If it's replicated to another one, and that's your mode of operation rather than migration, then we would have that information in the VTV Exposure reports.
Okay. There was another question about sizing. One of the headaches is for the IT staff is to understand enough ahead of time in order to properly budget for a hardware upgrade. Can you talk a little bit about the visibility provided that can assist with that kind of problem?
Okay, I guess I'm going to have to address this in general, but in general, I mean, you're really talking, I think, capacity planning kind of,
yes.
and trying to forecast ahead. And so most of that would probably be done in the trending area of IntelliMagic Vision, where I would see how that information was changing over time, okay? And maybe here's an example, okay? Let's just say I'm monitoring replication backlog in a 7700 environment over time, and I'm noticing that my backlog is peaking at higher and higher numbers now over the last few months. Maybe an indication, okay, that I need to do something, either add another cluster into the grid, or split my workloads to two different grids. That would be the type of things that I could infer from looking at some of the trending data. And again, the metric that you use could be different. Could be just what's the channel throughput going into there, and I've got a point that I say, I think after this point, I think I need to add additional resources into the mix. Also, can be we certainly look at the real tape drives or the back-end tape drives in a 7700 to see if that's supporting the workload well. So, but I would look that over the trending on a daily basis. Hope that answers that.
Yep, very good. Okay, great. Well, as Bert mentioned, I mean, this was kind of an overview of some of the new features. It's certainly not comprehensive, and it's actually probably easier than you think to see the product and how it operates with your data by sending it to our software as a service platform. It's a pretty quick and easy process. There's no confidential data included, just metrics about the environment. I mean, we're happy to sign. We've got a confidentiality agreement, or we can use yours if you want to take a look. If you think it's interesting, we're glad to spend some time helping you understand the capabilities of the product for your particular workloads and your particular hardware environment. So you will be getting an email, as Anthony had indicated, with a link to the recording. You can just reply to that if you're interested in getting some more details or seeing a different kind of presentation to better understand the capabilities and how they might help your environment. So with that, I think we're done for today. Thank you very much for your time, and you'll enjoy a couple of extra minutes in the hour. Thank you, Bert. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks from all of us at IntelliMagic. Have a great day.